Community Orchard's been here since 2001, so we've been here 14 years. And in this time we've not had a place where everybody can keep warm and dry. We started really last summer, so July 2014. I think it was Pete, who's the structural engineer, got in touch with Wilmot Dixon, who were a construction company building something in St Anne's. And Stuart Partlow, who's their community guy, came and met us, and he was very enthusiastic. And he linked up with New College in Nottingham. We had trainees who were looking to get construction experience. And suddenly it was one of those win-win-win-win-win-win-win situations. And they provided a digger, they provided the labour, they provided the concrete, and we got the concrete pillars in place, all in a crazy morning. And that really got us back to speed. Then it was the timber construction, and then we got to the straw bale, and it became much more sort of everybody getting involved.
The building's built on concrete pier foundations. There's 12 pits that have been dug with the help of Wilmot Dixon and a 5-ton mini digger and filled with reinforced concrete, and on top of those we've put concrete blocks laid on their side, and those are built at different heights to compensate for the ground level to make the building level. And on top of those we put some timber frames which the building sits upon. We chose to use straw bale here for a number of reasons. It's extremely well insulating, obviously, which is important because the whole purpose of this building is to provide a all-weather large space that can be used for kids' play work that the orchard do, a variety of activities. Straw is very insulating. It's nice, it's a friendly thing to do in terms of its participatory. Volunteers have really enjoyed building it and splitting bales and piling them all up. It's environmentally reasonably beneficial because straw's essentially a byproduct of growing wheat. It's quite cheap, it's biodegradable, it's local as well, so for all these reasons straw is a good choice. Bales are essentially, they can be thought of as being like giant bricks. We lay them like giant bricks in the wall, and they're cross-bonded in the same way that bricks are, so the vertical joints don't run together through the building, they're staggered for increased strength. We start off by, on the base frame that lies on top of the foundations, we make a rack in which we put sharpened hardwood stakes of local ash or hazel. They're about 10 inches long and sharpened to a point with a billhook. Those are fixed securely to the timber base plate, and the first course of bales is essentially impaled on those. So that fixes the bottom of the wall and gives the wall stability. Once the stakes have been placed on the base plate, we put some hessian over the base plate to stop straw falling through the bottom of the base plate. And we use hessian here and elsewhere in the building because it's a natural product. It's not going to attract condensation to itself, and it's porous, so it allows air to pass through, which is important. Ventilation of the bales to ensure that any dampness that might get on them through condensation or a little bit of rain is very quickly dispersed. And then we basically pile the bales up like bricks to make the walls. And one interesting thing to note is that because we have to cross bond them like bricks, there's a certain amount of splitting of bales that goes on, because if you cross bond them and you've got a whole number of bales on the bottom of the lowest level of the wall, the next layer up will need to start with a half bale to offset the bonds. So it's done essentially with a giant needle. So what we do is, because the bales are held together by baler twine, there's 2 loops of baler twine that hold all the straw together and give it its rigidity. What we do is we re-thread the bales using these giant needles with fresh baler twine to make 2 half bales and tie them off with a particular knot, and then the original baler twine can be cut off, and then it falls apart into 2 new rebaled halves. And then when it's all piled up, it's a question of, there's a certain amount of finishing. We use hessian to dress the edges before the render can go on the outside and the plaster on the inside, to sort of soften the edges and cover over any timber that needs covering. And we also trim before we apply the renders. I've been using an angle grinder with a wire brush, but there's various ways you can do it to sort of take off all the loose surfaces of the straw and make it a bit more even. We protect the outside of the building with lime render. We use this because although water won't penetrate too far into the edges of the bales from rain, it's to make it properly weatherproof and also resilient, so it doesn't get taken by birds for nesting material or knocked. It gives it a hard and yet breathable coating. It's important, I stress breathable because it's important, because bales need to breathe. Any moisture that's in the bales needs to be able to naturally migrate out of it and disperse, and lime does that. So we've been mixing lime putty with sand in a proportion of roughly 1 to 3. It's quite hard work mixing. It's a good time to get a lot of volunteers in, and a lot of people have had a hand in chopping that and bashing that and making it into the mix we need. It's quite a physical process and feels quite medieval, and the process in fact hasn't changed much since the Middle Ages. It's a very sticky mix, and we apply it to the walls with a gloved hand, and it sticks well. And then we smooth it out, damping it where necessary, especially in warmer weather, to reduce cracking. And there are 2, in some places 3 coats, with a final coat of lime wash to seal any little cracks and give a uniformity of colour and texture to the outside.
Today we're getting started with the clay plaster on the inside of the Straw Bale Building, and what we've been doing today is mixing up a slip from the clay mixed with water. So it starts off straight out of the ground, quite lumpy. We break that up, we soak that with water overnight, and then we're mixing that up using a paddle mixer so that it makes the consistency of like melted chocolate. And that's the stuff that we're applying straight onto the straw bales, onto the walls. What that does is it coats the straw bale, and it also means that the next layer is going to have something to stick to. So we're putting it on all the straw bale walls, and then when we come to the edges, what we're doing is dipping hessian strips into the clay slip and working those along the top and any edges so that we've got a nice kind of smooth corner to work onto with the next layer of plaster. So once we've coated all of the walls in the clay slip, the next stage that we're going to do is going to be mixing up a kind of thicker plaster layer. That layer is made up of clay and sand and straw. So you've got maybe about 70 to 80% sand mixed with clay, and we mix that with our feet, so we'll be stamping it all together into a smooth mixture and adding this chopped straw into there to kind of give it extra strength, and applying that to the walls with our hands. So that's the kind of the main sculptural layer that helps us to even out any of the bumps in the walls or fill in hollows. And once that's gone on, that will take quite a long time to do. Once we've got all of that on, we will do a skim layer just to kind of tidy the whole thing up.
The bales are well insulated, and we've generally tried to make the building quite insulating. All the windows are double glazed. The living roof itself, which is like 3 inches of soil and plants, will give some insulation as well. The floor's got insulation, the suspended wooden floor's got insulation under it. And with the wood burner we put in, it means that in winter that should generate enough heat to make the building more comfortable to be in, even in the coldest weather. It's been put in its own brick chimney, and it also has the facility, it's got hot plates on it so that they can put soup or the kettle on and make simple food in winter.
It's just been volunteers of all shapes, sizes and ages. Kids, school visits, we've got kids from Thornywood Education Base. They come every week. They do a little bit, but they see the building being built, they watch the process, they get to know Tim, and that's a very priceless experience, I think, for kids to actually see how these things take place. We have orchard volunteers who come every week, and they've been here all the way through the process. We had a few weekend events where more people would come along. We've had extra groups come in, Gateway to Nature came in, Urban Pastures came in, we've had some local businesses coming in, boys from Nottingham High School put the soil on the roof. But mainly it's just been individuals who got interested, and then they tell their mates, and we've had kids who've come back with their dad or their mum or their aunt, and it has felt like something that everybody can get involved in. It's a warm, dry space where people can feel comfortable, and that's really important. It's a space where people can be inside, and yet by sitting inside with all that glass, they can also feel like they're outside. And it's a space where new activities might take place, maybe parent and toddler groups, maybe creative stuff, therapy stuff where you kind of need a little bit of focus. When you're outside, it's all happening all the time, and that's wonderful. but it means your attention is so completely on the environment, whereas to be able to go inside and just reflect, have that space, have that slightly more focused space, and then go outside again. But it's primarily a space. We don't want it to be cluttered. It's going to be somewhere where new things can happen without losing that outdoor dimension. It will be somewhere where we can maybe look at the experience of being in the outdoors from a slightly different angle. So it's a building, but there's lots of other added benefits. It's a focus for the community in terms of people coming together to build it, and a focus for the community in terms of working out how to use it and enjoying the space. So I hope that in 5-10 years' time it would be almost impossible to imagine the community orchard without that building, as well as the community orchard still being exactly what it is, which is this beautiful outdoor space where people can enjoy being outside.